What's up guys? This video that you're about to see is a video of a tiger time-lapse. Jamie sat really well for this. It's quite a big tattoo. It took around 5-6 hours, I think, 5 hours. Okay, the rose on the arms healed already. Been healed about a month, I think. If you've got any questions on the things I use, the equipment, the needles, the inks, anything I used, write down in the comments. I'll answer 100% truthfully on what I used, and enjoy the video, and I'll see you in the next one. Hey, what's up guys? I thought I'd go through a few of my techniques and stuff and what I'm doing, and just things I do to prepare for a tattoo and stuff. So this is a stenciling stage. I'm just picking out sort of the different segments of light and dark and black shading and stuff. So basically where I'd want to, like an indication of where I'm gonna start to tattoo. So in the ears, I'm picking out the light section where it's white, and then the black, and just going around that whole sort of shape. And when it goes onto the skin, I can sort of match it up and see what shade is gonna go where on what part of the skin and what part of the tattoo. So that's that. And as I'm sort of just going around the black stripes, just putting them all in, making sure I've got all the light shades and different sort of tones and stuff, marking them out, making sure I'm marking them out, and always flipping up the page, just making sure it's all nicely going on and how it's looking. So there's no sort of reference where to start on a stencil like this. I sort of start sometimes at the bottom and work my way up as if I was gonna tattoo it, or I'll start at the top, or normally I start probably at the bottom and then work my way up as if I was gonna tattoo it. So I'll just speed this up for a minute and just making sure I've got everywhere. That's it. So this is the finished stencil, and as I put it up to the light, you can double check and see, here you go, you can double check and see where everywhere is, and see if you've missed anywhere. So it looks like I've missed a bit around the right eye there on the top. So I'll then put it back down and go back into it, and I'll just make sure that I've got every line and stuff, because when it's so crucial guys, the stenciling stage, the more detail you put into the stenciling stage, the more detail your tattoo will have. This is the fundamental of pretty much the base of your tattoo. So if you've missed out important parts, you can't really guess them, because it's a dangerous game when you're guessing when it comes to sort of copying from a reference. So the next step is to cut it out, and when you cut it out, when I cut it out, I go as close as to the picture and the bits I've drawn, like stenciled as possible, like drawn on, without obviously cutting through it. And then what I do is, to allow for the stretch, I cut little slits in like this, again not going into the main bit, just the outside spaces, around the back, sort of I'm going into the stripes a bit, but that's fine, because you know, stripes are stripes. It's pretty straightforward. But if you're doing a portrait, try not to go into the face. This is the space I'm working with. That rose is healed, all nice actually. Sorry, I've got a bit of a sore throat today. So yeah, so this is a space, and this is me stenciling it on. And if you notice how the slits have sort of allowed it to expand on the arm without it creasing, so it gives it a nice coverage, and I can pat it down and I can push it down on the skin and leave it there for about 20-30 seconds, and then take it out, and you can see the slits have sort of like expanded. So because if you're trying to put a flat surface onto a round surface, like a flat image onto a round surface, it's always going to crease. So you can see towards the ditch it's not stuck on properly. So what I'll do is just Sharpie that on, use a pen, Sharpie pen, and just Sharpie that on. There you go. As you can see in the red part, that's just the Sharpie, just to make sure I've got all the reference still there, and to fill in the blanks what that hasn't sort of stuck on. If it's too like bad, the stencil, don't be afraid to just wipe it all off with alcohol, clean the skin again, prep the skin again with stencil stuff. That's what I use to stick the stencil on, and start again. You could probably use a stencil around 3 times. So if you've messed up on the first one, if it's blurry, or you've moved it, or you've used too much stencil and it's like blurred it out, it's like gone soggy and stuff, then you've probably got about 2 more times, depending on it, if the stencil is still okay on the paper. But this time was good. So to start off with, I'm slowly just feathering in some details. I'll always start from the bottom and then work my way up. I'm just getting the client used to the pain and what it's going to feel like and stuff. And I'm just slowly feathering in some details. That looks like a black stripe I'm doing there, and like the legs underneath the tiger. So yeah, so this is slowly just working my way, using the side of the needle as well. You want to don't be afraid to just use the needle like one way. You know, flip it round, use the side of it like I'm doing here to get into tight spaces and different textures and stuff like that. That looks like a whisker in between a whisker. So I'm using the side of the mag and just going up and down. So it's not a fat texture, it's a thin one, and we'll speed it up. And I'm just going to add some smoke here with the Sharpie, just some more layers to it, just to give it a bit more depth. And I'm just going in with the black, just outlining it with probably a 9 mag here. Yeah, 9 mag I would have thought, and then I'll probably go into a 15 on the outside, what I'm doing here with a light shade. And that's yeah, again, just going through it, picking out all the dark spots really first, and then going into the mid tones and then the light tones, or the dark then the light then the mid. But I try and work probably from dark and then sort of go up into light. But when you dip from a dark ink cup and then go into a light ink cup, you always want to have like a cup of water there, so because it can cross-contaminate. And when you dip from the dark and then go into the light, you'll always have a bit of the dark going into the light, and that'll obviously, the light will then become darker, so then your whole tattoo will be dark if you're relying on that light ink cup. So, and if it's contaminated with the darker ink, like the black outlining ink, then you're always going to have a really dark thing. So before you dip, make sure when you've dipped from the dark ink into the light ink, make sure between that you just rinse your needle out with sterile water or distilled water or whatever. Just make sure it's clean, and then you know that the light shade will remain light throughout the whole tattoo in the ink cup. And yeah, we're just working our way around up to the right side, and then we're probably going to go across up into the left corner. So that's the route I'm taking on this one. And I'm using around the eyes here. I'm using to do the eye. I used a Type 5 liner, which I find is the best and the strongest to do stuff like this. And it's a very thin needle, so it's nice. It's not as thin as a 3, but then I find a 3 quite inconsistent, so I always just use a Type 5, which is basically like a 3, but it's a bit more body to it, so it's a bit stronger. Quick break. Client needed something to eat. I always like to keep the client's blood sugar levels up during the tattoo, because if it is a big tattoo like this one, where it goes over the ditch of the arm, which is quite a very sensitive area, so it's quite a sensitive area, so it's nice to just give them breaks and stuff. But yeah, we're still going in with the black again, like I said, because I sort of go in with the darks first, because it's easier to then overlay light shade, because it doesn't matter if you go over into the dark section of that, because it's already dark, you know. So if you've got the dark base there, it doesn't matter if you go over the lines with the light, because it's not going to affect the dark, because it's a dark pigment. So it's just a bit easier, which is why. But yeah, this is the technique I use. I use quite fast hand movements, but I kind of layer it up and sort of feather it in as if it was a paintbrush, you know. But if you keep your hand consistent, the speed, each sort of time you go into the skin, if you keep the same consistent flow, but try not to overwork the skin, so don't go too deep, because the deeper you go, the more trauma it is to the skin. So literally just really lightly feather it in. Doesn't matter if you have to go in 4, 5, 6 times to get the pigment in, the ink in, because if you've gone light, it doesn't matter. The skin can become red, but just give it a few moments. Like in the top there, I've gone in and it's become quite sore and red around the ditch, around the top of the tiger's head. So I've just gone to another area while that's sort of taking time to die down, and then I'll go back into that at a later stage when I know I can see where the light shades are. Because when you're using light ink, it can go quite red and you don't think there's any ink in there, but there is. You just have to allow the skin to de-red itself, come back down from a red hue and allow it to just sort of relax a bit, and then you can go back into it after it's calmed down a bit. So around this side, towards the inner upper part of this, so the left ear and that left bit of smoke up in the top left corner, that's quite a sensitive part, so that can become very red as well. And we're just going to sort of go through this, making sure that we're picking out all the right tones in the right places, always looking at your reference. My reference is off this picture up to the right hand side, so I've got that, and I'm always looking. I'm using different, again I'm probably using a 15 mag there to do the shading of the mane on the tiger, so I'm sort of using the side of it, just making sure it's thin and sort of hair-like, fur-like sort of textures, and then I go back into the ear and make sure that's all nice. But my hand movements are fast. It's just something I've learned and how I've learned to tattoo. Other artists have smoother strokes and slower strokes, but it depends on the voltage as well. I run my machine at 9.6 volts, so that is one of the reasons why I sort of have faster hand movements, because it's quite a fast speed, and then other people will drop it down to 8 or even 7 in some cases. But I like to keep it sort of fast, and when I'm in the zone, I'm in the zone, and I can sort of keep it at a certain pace, the same pace throughout the whole thing. So I'll just jump a few steps here. So what I'm doing now is spraying some Vaseline onto the tattoo, which is a numbing agent. It's a numbing spray, and I'll just leave it on there for about 30 seconds because the client was struggling a bit with the pain because it is a big tattoo. But you can see where the skin's sort of dying down with the colours, and the light shades are really starting to come through on the nose and around the top of the area, the top of the tattoo, and around the eyes. I've got some spray on the bed, so I'm just wiping that, making sure it's all clean. So yeah, I think we'll start by going back into the top, which is a painful area, which is why he just needed 30 seconds or so just to numb it up. And that spray, I wouldn't use that throughout the whole tattoo because it does change the texture of the skin. It can make it a bit rubbery, and the darks become light and stuff because it's sort of taken away some of the blood from the skin. So I'm just going back into the tattoo towards the top, making sure it's all nice and neat, and we will fast forward that one. So I think we are about there on this one. I'm pretty happy with the shades I've put in. Just making sure all this is nice and saturated towards the ditch of the arm, because it can fall out because your arm's always bending and moving around, so the ditch is quite a difficult place to keep things in. So I'm just making sure it's all nice and saturated with colour and ink. And I think it's about there. I think I'm quite happy with how it's turned out, and I'm just going to give it a final spray, a final wash down with green soap and water, and just make sure all the tones and all the bits are there. I'm probably going to go into the middle of the rose and just sharpen it up a bit with a darker colour, probably a black outline in black. My inks I use is world famous ink, and I dilute it with sterile water. So I'm just going into the centre of this rose, making sure it's all nice and crisp. And I think it's about there. If you've stayed to watch this far, thank you so much, and I hope you've learned a few things from this video, and it's been a pleasure to take you through this one, and I hope you like it. This is the final result in some different lighting. So the rose is healed, and the tiger is fully fresh. I put some white highlights in the eyes and in the nose and the whiskers, and so because it's a lighter ink than red, which is the blood coming through, it's always going to show. So if you leave it about half an hour to just die down, the blood will stop coming through, and the white ink will come through. So this is the final thing. As you can see in the eyes, where I've used the white, I've just dotted in the white and put a thin line around the bottom of the eye there. That really pops it out. I think white ink is a massive must for a tattoo to just finish it off. And this is it in a darker light. And if you liked that video, if you had any questions, just give me a comment and I will reply. Thanks for sticking with me on this 20-minute video, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks, guys.